in Beckn, every commerce transaction is divided into 4 stages, okay, which is discovery, ordering, fulfillment, and post-fulfillment. And as I mentioned, there are a specific set of APIs associated with each stage of the order lifecycle. Which means there are some APIs which are just used for discovery, some APIs used for ordering, a bunch of APIs which are used for fulfillment, some APIs which are used for post-fulfillment. Okay, so what you see in front of you is a list of all the APIs that must be implemented by every network participant on the network. Now, as you all know, that Beckn APIs are asynchronous APIs, which means that every API has an associated callback, right? Which means that if I'm doing a search, if I as a BAP, if I'm doing a search, which means the BPP will have to implement the search API, right? And I know that the callback is going to come in on search, which means that I need to implement the on search API, right? So so these APIs which you see in front of you are all the APIs that must be implemented by a BPP. Okay, it's which means the search API, the select, init, confirm, the status, track, update, cancel, rating, and support. These are all the APIs which are supposed to be implemented by a BPP. And in analogous to that, there are all the these are all the APIs. These are the callback APIs that must be implemented by a BAP to receive all the callbacks, which means that search has on search, select has on select, init has on init, confirm, track, cancel, update, status, and rating and support. Okay, so so each API has a corresponding callback APIs. Okay, now let's look at what each of these APIs do in Beckn. So let's first look at the search API. Okay, now search is, as the name suggests, it's actually it's actually used for searching, right? Searching and discovery. Now, what actually goes inside a search? Now, the search contains so every API, as you see, contains 2 major objects, which is context and message. Context contains the network level details, which means like it contains domain, it contains country, it contains city, what's the action, which is action is basically the API which you are actually firing. What is the core version, what is the ID of the BAP which is going to be which is firing this API, what is the URL, the callback URL which it's supposed to receive the callback to, and the BPP ID and the BPP URI is the ones which it's actually calling towards. This is optional for a BAP. And then there's a transaction ID. The transaction ID is an interesting string over here, which basically remains constant for an entire business transaction between a BAP and a BPP, which means that if you want to know what are the sequence of APIs which have been fired to complete a particular transaction, okay, this transaction ID is actually used for mapping all those requests together, right? Then you can see that there is also something called as a message ID. This message ID is a unique value which is used to map a request with a callback, basically, right? The message ID actually has this string is used for doing that. Then you have a timestamp. It's basically the time at which this request was fired. Then there's a key, which basically is used for sort of encryptions. Right now, it's not being used in the spec right now. And there's a TTL, right? TTL is basically how long this request is valid for. Right? So these are the various APIs that are these are the various fields inside the context header, which is basically used in the used in every API. Okay. Then every API message also every request body also contains something called as a message. This contains the actual object which represents a particular transaction. Okay, particular API calls. So, for example, for search, the message carries an object called intent. Okay, now this intent, it tells you what a BAP user wants to do. What is his intent? The intent is basically contains what the idea, what the BAP actually wants to do. It basically contains a fulfillment, what is who he wants to transact with, what is the fulfillment, what is the nature of the fulfillment he wants, and what category he wants to browse, what are the offers he wants. So basically the intent object basically tells you what exactly the BAP user actually wants when he's actually searching for a particular catalog. Okay. Now on the flip side, the on search OnSearch response contains the actual catalog. Okay, as you know, the OnSearch is implemented by a BAP and it is fired by a BPP. Okay, so this OnSearch contains a very similar structure, except that it contains an additional error object which tells you if there are any business transaction related errors, say for example catalog unavailable, or the catalog is actually sorry, yeah, the catalog have whether the items are available or not. What are the items available in the catalog? If a particular search context is invalid or anything. So this error contains the code for that. Then the message contains the actual catalog, which is catalog of items which are being sold by a BPP. So the catalog contains a descriptor of the BPP. It contains the categories. It contains the various ways a BPP can offer fulfillment of an order. It tells you the various types of payments a BPP can support. It tells you what are the offers which are available at a BPP level. Now, within a BPP, so as you know, BPP is a Beckn API implementation platform which onboards businesses on its end, right? So businesses which are onboarded by a BPP are called providers. Okay, so as you can see over here, BPP/providers, these are the various businesses which are onboarded by a BPP, and the catalog object contains all the businesses which match a particular search request. Okay, so this so which means in response to every search, you will get an array of providers. And these array of providers can be sellers, it can be stores, and these stores don't necessarily have to be located in one place. They can have multiple locations. A particular store might have multiple locations across a particular area. So this providers array also contains all the various. So it contains sort of the same fields which you saw on top. The providers also contains the similar set of fields within a provider, which tells you that a BPP can offer lots of categories and fulfillments at a platform level, but it is overridden, okay, by all the offerings which a particular store makes at a catalog inside its own catalog. For example, that let's say Swiggy is a BPP. Okay, now Swiggy might offer its own delivery service, right? And but a store, say for example Domino's, right? Domino's does not have its does not rely on Swiggy's delivery agencies. It has its own delivery. So Domino's is a provider, right? And Domino's has its own fulfillment, okay, which it also offers when it comes to fulfilling an order. So this object represents an entire store. It represents an entire business which has been onboarded by a BPP. Now there could be a one mapping between a BPP and a provider, or there could be an aggregation sort of a model where a particular BPP can onboard more than one provider, right? So this is a typical example of a search catalog. So so more details on the search API. There are literally thousands of use cases that can be implemented using search APIs. To do that, requesting anybody to go through the specifications first, see what what applies to them, and they can always have the you can always communicate with the developer community to understand how to implement search and all. But just to give you an overview of what the search API does. Now they have a select API. Now the select API is sort of the equivalent of adding items to your cart. Select is basically where you select your items which you have received during the OnSearch, and you add those items and send it to the BPP. Now the BPP will basically compute the quote of the total cart value of the items which have been added, and then return a quotation which sort of lasts for a particular amount of time in the OnSelect API. So the OnSelect contains a quote. So if you look at select, it contains basically the IDs of the items. Let me open the schema over here. Yeah, it contains the items, and this is the context over here. Give me a second, guys. Yeah, the select object contains all the providers, contains the items it has selected for buying, If there are any add-ons related to the item, they could be item specific add-ons, it could be item independent, like whatever, promotional add-ons, and there are offers which can be added to your cart, right? So when you add all of these items to a particular search select API and fire it to the network, the BPP is going to compute the code for it and fire the and send back the quotation in the OnSelect. If you look at OnSelect, it'll have uh, it'll have pretty much the same structure, but it has also an additional quote object over here. That quote will contain the price and the total value of items and everything, and how long this quote is also going to last. Right? So selection is basically the equivalent of adding or removing items from your cart, basically updating your cart. Now init is an interesting API that now that once you have added the items in your cart, you also add your billing and your shipping details, right? So you add your billing, shipping details in addition to the items and offers and add-ons to your cart. If you look at the init API, or you add the items, add-ons, offers, you also add your billing and your fulfillment details. Now, once you have added your billing and your fulfillment details, the BPP now recalculates the quote, which means that it probably needs to add your delivery charge or anything, and delivery charge and payment terms, and finally returns the actual amount that needs to be paid, okay, along with the payment terms of a BPP, right, in your OnInit API. When I say payment terms, as I said, Beckn protocol allows the seller to sort of retain his autonomy, right, onto the backend network. So in OnInit, the BPP actually sends you what are the payment terms that needs to be supported. When this payment must happen. Should this payment happen on order, like in case of prepaid orders? Does the payment have to happen before the order gets confirmed? Can the payment happen after the order gets confirmed, but before the fulfillment actually starts? And then what if the payment is required only at the time of fulfillment? Basically, you pay once you have received the order, and then it could also be post fulfillment, that once you have received the order, after a particular time, say for example at the end of the month, you basically settle the amount between the buyer and the seller. So those are the payment terms which a BPP can actually send back, and the BAP can render its UI based on the terms of payment and fulfillment, right? And the same way, just like it sent the payment terms, it also sends you what are the various fulfillment terms, whether tracking is possible, whether cancellation is possible. Those kind of things is also sent during the OnInit call by the BPP. So once the payment terms are read by the BAP, and once the payment has been made, then a BAP can actually call the confirm API. The confirm API basically means I agree to your terms, right? And if one of those terms involve me paying before the actual order gets confirmed, I have made the payment for this order, and please now confirm my order. Here is the proof of payment, and please confirm my order. So confirm API basically contains the entire order object along with the proof of payment. So if you look at order, if you open the order object inside confirm API, you will contain all the items which have been added along with the billing and the fulfillment and the quote and everything, but it also contains the payment object, which basically contains the proof of payment. Whether you have paid via UPI, what is the proof of payment, like the transaction status and the transaction ID, etc. If you have paid via, say, for example, an external medium, like say if you've just done a bank transfer, right? So then you send the transaction ID and the payment which has been, so the BPP will have to independently verify at its end whether it has received the payment, etc. So it could also be a transaction status, assigned transaction status by a payment gateway. So that the payment proof is sent inside the payment object over here, right? We will go into payment a little later. I think that's a longer discussion over here. So the confirm API basically tells you that, hey, I agree to your fulfillment policy and payment policy. Please confirm my order. Right. So once you fire the confirm API, the BPP checks whether the payment has happened or not happened, whatever, depending upon the payment terms. The BPP finally adds an order ID to the order object and sends back an active order in the onConfirm API. So these sort of first four APIs sort of help in establishing a smart contract between a buyer and a seller, right? So confirm API actually completes a particular transaction, right? And that results in a completed, sorry, not in a confirmed order between a buyer and a seller, right? After that, you enter into the fulfillment stage where there are 4 APIs where you are continuously tracking the status of an API. Then you are tracking basically, when you're tracking the status of an order, like especially like when it comes to fulfillment status, that the order has been picked up, the order has been order is on route to the location, and if the order is actually at the location, the order has been picked up. All the typical fulfillment statuses which you see on any typical e-commerce app is going to be accessible using the status API. So status API basically gets you the latest active order object, right? And one interesting thing is that the status API does not necessarily have to be called every time by a BAP. The BPP can also asynchronously push this on status API back to the BAP without having an explicitly status API called. Similarly, track. So track basically it's used for fetching the tracking details of a particular BPP. Say if the BPP itself is fetching the tracking info from another platform via another network, this track API can be used to fetch those details from a particular BPP. So technically, it's not tracking which is happening via the network. It's more of the tracking info which gets transferred. Like the tracking info could be either an embeddable tracking web page, or it could be a WebSocket link where the BPP is continuously pushing the tracking data for. Then we have cancel. Cancel is pretty self-explanatory, because cancel is basically tells you the cancel is basically used to tell the BPP that, hey, I want to cancel this order. Right now, the BPP may choose to just simply cancel the order, or the BPP may also send the cancellation terms along with an error code saying that, hey, these are the terms which you need to fulfill. There's a particular payment which you might need to make before canceling the order. So the BAP will have to say, okay, I agree, I will make the payment. I have made the payment, and then you call cancel API again to actually cancel your order. And update is basically to update an active order. So if you want to update your billing details, shipping details, if you want to increase or decrease the quantity of items inside a particular active order, you can call the update API, and the update will actually and the BPP can again choose to either directly update the items in your order, or it might need to it might send you back some update terms saying that, hey, these are you might need to pay a little extra to actually update your order, or you say BPP can simply say, hey, yeah, your order is updated, but you have to pay once your delivery happens, etc. So those terms are transmitted in your onUpdate API. Similarly, the rating. Now, rating is an interesting API, because one can rate a lot of things in an e-commerce. Right? One can not just rate the quality of order, but it can also rate the rate the items in that order. It can rate a seller. It can actually rate the support it has received. So to do that, there are a bunch of meta APIs which are part of the specification. Which allow the BPP to asynchronously sort of transmit what are all the various entities inside its environment that can be rated. Okay, so there is an API. If you go down, you will see something called as BPP meta APIs. Okay, now the BPP meta APIs basically have APIs like get cancellation reasons, get return reasons, get rating categories. These are some static APIs which do not have that much sort of slow moving APIs which don't get updated that frequently, because cancellation reasons don't generally change every day, right? It's typically standard for a particular duration, and those sort of APIs have been specified as part of some meta APIs. Like for example, one of them is get rating categories. So get rating categories actually gets you all the various entities that can be rated within a BPP. Now that can be called by a BAP once in a while, right? To get the rating category once in a day, maybe it can just call the rating APIs and cache those values, and then it can actually use the rating API to rate that particular category. So in the rating API, you'll see that you'll be sending the rating category ID, and then you're going to send the rating value. Now, if that submission of that rating requires a particular feedback, Because for example, like in Uber, say if you rate a particular ride as bad, it asks you, hey, what went wrong? Right? In those cases, the on rating API actually sends a feedback form. That feedback form could be in the form of a link, or that could be within the API itself, which can be rendered by a BAP in the on rating to actually collect the feedback after you have provided your rating. Okay. At the same time, now there is a support API. The support API actually does the same. It works very similar to sort of the tracking API, where you are actually getting the info, the support contact info. That could be an email, that could be a chat link, that could be that could be a phone number. The support API basically fetches all the information regarding the support of a particular entity. Now, just like rating, there are multiple things that can require support, right? One could be fulfillment support, one could be payment support, one could be item support. For example, you bought a TV and you want to contact support for that to actually get that TV installed, which means that you can actually get the support category ID, and then you can actually specify what support you want, and in the on support, the BPP will give you that relevant support info, basically. So these are just a quick overview of all the APIs which are implemented in Beckn. Obviously, there are a lot of use cases that can actually each of these APIs support. Okay, obviously we cannot go through all of those APIs within a single call, but let's see if we can go through some of the use cases, right, between a BAP and a BPP as part of the session.